As we all know, the Seattle Sounders are in last place with 0 wins, 1 goal from open play, and fans are frustrated to say the least. I've already done a video discussing all of my frustrations from top to bottom with the team in this video, so if you guys want to go check it out after you finish this one, make sure to go do so. In today's video, I wanted to get an MLS expert's opinion on the current situation with the Seattle Sounders. Who else better to get on other than MLS Moves, who's been on the YouTube grind recently, pumping out videos, MLS content for days. So now let's get an outsider's perspective on how the Seattle Sounders have become the worst team in MLS. This video will be more of a podcast style video, completely unedited with timestamps, something different from what we normally do on this channel because I wanted this to be more of like a discussion with just two MLS fans talking about the various topics currently going on with the Seattle Sounders. But nonetheless, let's jump into it. The best place to probably start when it comes to talking about the Seattle Sounders right now is their form this season. They're currently in last place, 0 wins, 1 goal from open play. Will, I mean, what has your thoughts been of the Sounders so far this season?
There's a plethora of reasons, right? I mean, the injuries, the coaching, the front office. There's just so many things that's going wrong with this club right now. And one of the things I've always praised the Sounders for is they were kind of like the MLS gold standard for this era of MLS, right? I mean, they've won like 2 MLS Cups in the last 8 years, first club to win the Champions League. And even though that's a lot of recent success, doesn't it feel like it's been a while? Like it doesn't feel as recent as it actually has, just because this team has really struggled lately. In 2022, if I'm not mistaken, that's the first time this club has ever missed the playoffs in a league where more than half the teams in the make the playoffs. So it's just kind of like, what are we watching? Like this doesn't even look like the same Sounders we're accustomed to seeing. And there's just so many question marks. There's a lot of frustration. I don't know how any fan of the Sounders right now is calm, cool, collected with what they've seen transpire the last 3 seasons.
So you're like saying there's no like silver lining whatsoever.
Absolutely no silver lining. I mean, I don't see it. I mean, this team is just constructed with older players, but like some of the guys aren't that old. They just been around with the team for so long. They've kind of stagnated and they're just not contributing. Like they have no goal scorers at all. They haven't for 3 years now.
For you, what are the main issues that you're noticing so far come these first 5 games? Something that I've said in a recent video was the problems haven't just happened like overnight for this team. It is kind of been something that's been, I think, going on for the last couple of years. Like you said, this team has had success, and there's some of its fairly recent success, being it the CCL, winning MLS Cup 2019, MLS Cup 2016. It's not that like big of a time span, but in MLS years, it's kind of like doggy years. Things can change very quickly, especially when Messi came. There's been a big revelation, I'd say, in this league compared to years past. Things have really like very much accelerated. And so just basically the main point I wanted to ask you was, I mean, what are the issues that you're noticing from like top to bottom, the main ones, then how does that trickle down to other things?
Well, I just think that they're relying. It feels like Brian Schmetzer, even though he knows like what these players can contribute to, like what they can give the team, like Jordan Morris, for example, we've talked about this. We all think that he is lacking. He's not producing. He is underwhelming, right? But he keeps on. He insists on trying to keep relying on him to give this team something, to score goals, which he has proven he cannot do consistently. And I just think that Brian he has trouble of like trying to fit a square peg in a circle hole, or however that
Round
expression
hole.
goes, round hole
Yeah.
exactly. He's just not adjusting and trying to do things differently when they're not working. And I just think this team is really starting to show its age. Preparing for the show, I started to look at the roster, and I just feel like they really haven't added anything in the last couple years. I'm just, it's been kind of like the same thing for almost 4 or 5 years. And in MLS, you can't do that. You got to adjust. You got to add pieces every year, or you're going to get left behind. And we're seeing this year that that's what's happened. Pedro de la Vega, you said was kind of like on a minutes restriction. They didn't need to push him because he was already kind of like, 50-50 about, sitting him out so he could fully recover, but they kind of like got anxious, played him when they shouldn't have, and now he's how long is he out for now? Is it
I
like
don't know, like 4 to 8 weeks, something like that. Yeah.
yeah, 4 to 8 weeks, and, you know, with the schedule congestion, you know, they're playing a lot of games. Eventually, we're gonna be to where they're playing 2 games a week and not just 1 game a week. It just kinda makes you wonder, they're in last place right now. How far back are they going to be? I don't see any signings happening before the summertime. Are they gonna be in a deep hole they can't climb out of by the time the summer comes around? It just doesn't look good right now. I just think Brian Schmetzer, honestly, is probably the main problem right now. I just think he's very complacent with what's going on. I don't think he's pushing enough for changes or trying to get some of these players in or tried to this offseason. You know, I just think that it starts with him and you know, he probably will be the first one to go. You would think if things continue the way they are.
Yeah, that was gonna be the next question I asked you was, I mean, who and where do you think the fingers need to be pointed at? Because so many people have said so many, so many sides of it. It could be from the club to Craig Weibel to Brian Schmetzer to the players. But for you, I mean, you kind of answered it. Is Brian then the main guy in your eyes?
Yes, yeah, I think it is Brian. I just think that he's not adjusting. He's just not he's not improvising with what he has. He's just trying to do the same thing over and over again and it's just not working.
Definition
And
of insanity.
a definition of insanity, right? Exactly. And yes, I know he's won 2 MLS Cups. I know he's been to 4 MLS Cups. He won Champions League, but he hasn't done anything in at least in MLS regular season. He hasn't done anything since that 2020 season, you know, the COVID year. I mean, they did win the Champions League. We talked about that. But like you kind of said, it was a very favorable schedule to them. Like their bracket was very favorable to them. I mean, how often is it that you're playing Pumas in the final of the CONCACAF Champions League? They should have beaten them easily. Like that shouldn't have even been a question. I think many MLS teams would have beaten that club. So I think that he's kind of like it's almost like the fans are just have this allegiance to him, this loyalty where they don't want to question him. They don't believe it's even possible he could be the issue. It's got to be something else, right? It can't be. It can't be Brian. You know, like he's doing everything he possibly can for this team, and Craig is obviously, I think, at fault too. I mean, you know, you kind of thought maybe he could resembles something of what Garth had done previously, but we all know that that's not the case now. And Garth is, you know, missed very much by Seattle. You know, look what he's doing in Atlanta right now. Atlanta's rolling, right? You know, Yakimakis, that was his signing. What if he had signed with Seattle? What would this team look like if they
A
had
much needed position that Seattle needed was a really lethal
exactly?
striker like him. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of makes you wonder if that was like a player on his short list while he was at Seattle, and maybe there was some pushback, or they didn't want to sign him, or maybe they were cool with how things were, you know, with Ruidíaz and Morris. But you know, that's you know, just look at what he's doing there. I mean, there's very similar markets, very similar clubs, right? Atlanta and Seattle, and we're seeing him take that model there, and he's flourishing with the club. And you know, it's like it
With
looks
an old Sounders coach.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Which, you know, a lot of people still are on the fence about him. They kind of like he's not in the clear yet. Like there's still a lot of question marks about Gonzalo Pineda.
Gonzo Pineda is like a young coach. That's the thing is he's still learning and he's still trying to make his trademarks. And with him, there's like growth. But then when you think about like Brian, like, can there be much more growth with him? I mean, there could be, but like you can't teach old dog new tricks.
Exactly, exactly. And you know, also too, Brian, when he took over in 2016 for Ziggy, I don't know if anyone really expected him to be the long-term answer. I feel like it was more like
Yeah.
a placeholder. And then he won MLS Cup because of Nico Lodeiro. And they're like, well, damn, I guess we have to keep this guy. I mean, he just won us MLS Cup. You know, so you could maybe even argue that he kind of lucked his way into this job, like this, like the long-term stability, you know, keeping this job. But you know, I mean, I do think Brian is a good coach, but I believe sometimes things can become stagnant. You can become complacent, and it's nice for a change of scenery for all parties. You know, get some fresh ideas in there, change things up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we see it with so many of the great coaches in Europe, like regardless of like what success they've had, be it like Pep, Jose, I don't know, Mancini, whoever it may be. Sometimes, yeah, a different voice, a different leadership style, just kind of you can see invigorates a squad, and it could be that could be the case for Brian. Because at the end of the day, I think the reality is, and I'm not, again, everyone knows my stance on this, but at the end of the day, when your team is doing bad, the person that the fingers are going to be most pointed at is the coach, regardless if it is deserved or not deserved. And you can't sack in like a whole club organization. You can't sack, fire a whole 18 players in a squad. At the end of the day, it's the coach is the easiest one and it's the quickest and easiest solution. And Brian, I mean, I think we can base off what you said. He's on the hot seat. I mean, to start off the season, this is Seattle's joint worst. This is recorded obviously before the Montreal game, but joint worst start to a season. But the thing is compared to, I think it was 2013 when we had a rough start, Seattle at least were scoring some goals and they looked a little bit better than this, but just one goal from open play, like they look awful. That's the biggest problem is they look just so bad. So like confused of options, but then yet this is my problem with Brian is you're persisting with the same squad. At some point, it'll fix itself. It's been 5 games, Brian. You got to switch it up. And we'll see what happens come the Montreal game. We could eat our words with that, and he might come out with something a little bit better than before, but he doesn't help his case for sure with him persisting with the same players. Him This is something I mentioned as well, is like making it noticeable and telling that the office to be like, hey, I need players in XYZ positions, pushing for that. And I don't think he would throw anyone under the bus, but to be evident to be like, yeah, this team does need a striker. And there's nothing wrong with that because we've seen many coaches do that. And then clubs invest in the coaches they believe in.
No, yeah, exactly. And one thing that I've kind of thought about is, with Garth there, we kind of know he was pulling the strings, he was building the roster out. Maybe Brian had a little influence, but it was pretty much Garth's baby, right? Now with Weibel in charge, I wonder how much influence Craig or Brian has now. Like, is he the
That's a
one?
good question.
Does
Yeah.
he have more say in player acquisitions or scouting? I mean, I don't know. You would maybe think he does, especially with him being there as long as he has, and people obviously in the organization do respect him for what he has done. So if that is the case, then this is a failure on his part by not trying to get better players in here. And I've told you this as well, and this is one thing that I've hit home several times is Albert Rusnák, right? I would say he's been a pretty decent player for Seattle. He's not been bad. He's been okay, but the problem is a lot of times they were playing him out of position like several
Yeah.
times,
The first
and
season for
the
sure.
first season, and then not only that, but like is is Rusnak really a DP quality player, especially for the Sounders? Like that just
Or
seems like a
just this era of MLS anymore.
yeah,
No.
I
Yeah.
mean, maybe he is for Colorado or RSL, or maybe he is. Maybe I mean, maybe he is a DP quality player for like a club like that. But for the Seattle Sounders, we're talking. Like I said earlier, this is supposed to be the gold standard franchise in MLS. That is a reach for me. Like that's a TAM player at best. Like that was just very underwhelming and kind of like just told me a lot about like how they view things. It just seemed lazy to me. Like you sign a free agent guy, on a free, like that just this so underwhelming. You would hope. Where's the Clint Dempsey, the Raul Ruidíaz signing? The Nico
Omofemi
Lodeiro.
Martins.
Yes, Obafemi Martins. Where are those type of signings? Like that was a decade ago. We're talking about Albert Rusnak coming on a free transfer from another MLS club.
Pedro Della in the last 4 years, those are the only 2 big signings this team has made. When
Yeah,
you look at everyone else around the league, it's kinda like, "Ooh, that's not really that good." And the thing is too, one thing that many people don't think about is, like, the Rusnak deal was on a free. So, like, yes, it was like a DP signing, but it's not like, money terms, it wasn't necessarily a big signing because he was a free agent.
exactly, exactly. And you would think that like a player of Rusnak's quality, he got a pay raise coming from RSL to the Sounders, right? RSL at the time when they had other ownership, they were just so cheap that it was just weird. Like he wasn't, I don't even think he was making $1 million a year when he was there, but he was a DP to save salary cap, whatever. They weren't using it anyways, right? But like Raul Ruidíaz, like they spent what $9 million for him. I mean, that was ambitious. That was like, man, the Sounders are going for it. Like this club is not letting up. They're trying to keep their foot on the gas and not just be satisfied with one MLS Cup. They're trying to
Sitting on
win
their laurels.
multiple.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you would think that. I mean, I don't know. I know that Raul Ruidíaz signed an extension, maybe like 3 years, maybe 4 years into his tenure with the Sounders. I don't know if this is his last year on the deal. I think it is,
It
maybe.
is.
Yeah, they should have bought him out. He should have been. You have a one-time buyout each season in MLS. They should have bought him out. He hasn't played more than 20 games in a season for the Sounders since 2021.
That's
He's missed
crazy
his
to think
time. Yeah,
about.
he played 18 games in 22, 18 games in 23. Now, obviously, this season he's only played 5, but I'm just saying, like, you can't be using a DP spot on a guy who's not available.
I mean, having his like, for example, last season, 5 goals, 5 injuries. I mean, if you're having the same amount of goals as injuries as a forward, it's not a good look.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And like we just said a minute ago about Yakimakis, imagine him. He doesn't miss games. He's consistently scoring and consistently playing.
Not even just for Atlanta, club and country, man. He's consistently
Exactly.
playing for Greece, consistently playing for Atlanta, banging in goals, and it might help that he has a guy like Thiago Almada, for example. But this is going to be the next thing I want to talk to you about is like the players. We've talked about Bryant heavily. We've talked about Craig. I mean, Craig has taken so many L's. I think Pedro de la Vega, it's definitely, we all know definitely that's his Hail Mary right there. He's got to hope that he pans out when he comes back from injury. So far, signs have looked good, but he's hurt. And that's the problem is like your big signing after so many years is already hurt. It's just not a good look for Brian or Craig. But in regards to the players, I mean, we've talked a little bit about Albert. We've talked about Ruidíaz. I mean, is there any other players that you've mentioned? There's a bunch of players just old, stale. Who are players that come to mind for you?
I mean, I was a really big fan of João Paulo when he played. Obviously, he was really good, integral in their success in 19 and in 20. But like he's been injured a lot lately too. It feels like he's been
Ever
very
since that
injured.
ACL injury, yeah.
Yeah, been a downward spiral since he had that ACL injury, and he's like 33 or 34, so he's not getting younger. He's only
Yeah.
it's only downhill from here. Stefan Frei obviously has not been what he once was. You talked about Thomas. I know you said that was a controversial topic for you about giving him the start, the nod, letting him play, see if he could flourish and maybe turn into a consistent starter, and take the gloves away from Stefan Frei. It just, I mean, when you look at this team, it's crazy, man. It's like when I look at the 2018 Sounders and the 2024 Sounders, there's like only a few pieces that are different. It's a very
That's
similar
super
team.
concerning. That's
Yeah,
super
it is.
concerning.
It is. Yeah, because this, MLS is, I'm very critical of it. Want it to get better. We all do, but you can't be a good team if you have the same core roster for 6 years in MLS anymore. Like it's changing. It's evolving.
I think definitely at the time, Seattle had a good, recipe going with that kinda core roster, but, like, you have to adapt to what things are now, and I think definitely after 2021 was definitely the end of that cycle. In my opinion, I think 2021 was when things needed to start changing. That was the year where Seattle, I mean, we're competing in top of the Western Conference, but they were playing kinda on, like, one leg. They were playing like a very improvised 5 in the back for the first ever time with a lot of, like, a ragtag bunch of guys because Nico was injured for most of that season, and you didn't have your main guys, and you made a good push, but that was kind of, for me, the beginning where, okay, things needed to start changing, and I feel like Seattle's missed, like, 3 windows worth of rebuild opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And it just feels like they just been very conservative. Like they're just not like when I think of the Seattle and like how I like what standard I hold them to, like I look at them as the club that's pushing the envelope. Like they're the ones they should be the ones doing things that other clubs aren't doing, but not in like a bad way, where you're just keeping the same roster for 6 years. Like actually spending money to get talent. Now, Pedro de la Vega was a great signing. Or let me rephrase that, promising signing. We haven't seen enough of him to know if he's a great signing. It looks good though, right? When he was on the field, he looked creative. He looked, like honestly, he looked out of place compared to what we've seen with Seattle the last couple of years. It kind of like was a blur, but they need more of that. You can't just win with one guy like that anymore. You need two or three of those guys. You
At
know,
minimum.
yeah, at minimum. I remember us having a conversation a couple weeks ago about Leo Chu, where you wanted to sell him, right? You were ready to move off of him.
I mean, there was offers for him.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I don't think they're going to be any better than what they were reported a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, whatever it was. All three DP spots should be high performing, efficient players that are actually contributing and making this team better. I mean, they have two wasted spots right now on DPs. Rusnák and Ruidíaz are doing nothing. Their third DP is hurt. So it's like this club is playing without any DPs right now. And I just, something's got to give. Like, this is a huge summer for the Sounders. And you could talk about this maybe, obviously, you know more about this than I do, but just from an outside perspective, all the way in Tennessee, it just looks like the Sounders fans are like less engaged than they used to be. Like, it doesn't look like there's that same excitement or momentum that they had in years past. It just looks kind of like almost like it's dying.
Yeah, like fans are fed up basically.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like this. I mean, they were selling out like 47,000, or they weren't selling out, but they had 47,000 fans. It felt like at every home game. Are they even close to that anymore?
Yeah, now they're at 30,000.
Yeah, that's a huge drop off. Yeah, so I mean, like something's different. They just this team isn't fun to watch anymore.
And I think that's the biggest problem is fans are clearly starting to get it's just like I think the biggest problem is some fans may or may not want to admit where some of the problems would be due to obviously, what has happened in the past, be it with Raúl Ruidíaz, be it with Brian Schmetzer, be it with Stefan Frei. And again, I'm not saying all these guys are the main problems, but it's like a puzzle. Each piece connects together to make the whole image. And I think each piece, be it of Brian's poor tactics, his lack of maybe rotation, be it the big players aren't being big players like we just discussed, Craig Weibel not making the right ingoing, outgoing transfers now since he's been the GM now for 2 years. He hasn't really made that big splash. Obviously, Pedro de la Vega was supposed to be that guy, but it hasn't happened yet. And from the organization, not maybe telling these guys, hey, we're backing them, being like, we do need to make more signings. We do need to sell some players. There needs to be some change. It's just like there's a lot of complacency, in my opinion, be it from some fans, not all fans, because I will say, definitely in my comment section, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, there are fans who are really frustrated with certain players, with Brian, whatever it may be. Fans are upset, and that rightfully so. They're in last place. And I don't think this is a situation either where Seattle is just like, oh, but they're Seattle. They'll bounce back. This team looks really down bad. If you're actually watching the games, I don't know if you have or not, Will, but like when you watch these games, they look just like really, really toothless, like a wreck team. And that was the difference. Like you just said, when De La Vega was playing, it was like he was like a varsity A team starter, while the rest of these guys were first time ever playing the sport. That's what it just looks like. And that's why fans were so excited about Pedro, because he was so direct. He was bringing in something different. He was a breath of fresh air. And I think it comes down to all those factors that I just mentioned. And I wanted to ask you, as you said, you're an outsider perspective. Where do the problems get solved for this team? It's not going to happen overnight, just like how this didn't all happen overnight. It happened because we didn't do anything for many years. We sat on our laurels. We sat on our hands. We're like, we'll be fine. We're the Sounders. But at some point, that spark, that magic goes away if you don't do something about it. Nothing changes if nothing changes. For you, where does the solving of these problems begin for this team?
Well, I'll tell you this real quick, a little story. Last year, when I was talking to a source, they were telling me that Jordan Morris and Christian Roldan were wanting DP money from the Sounders, and they were saying that if you don't give it to us, we know other clubs will, because there are teams in MLS that are desperate enough to pay for the name recognition, the name recognition for national team players to try to get some fan appeal or get people interested. And
I
I was
remember
like,
this. I
yeah.
remember this. Yeah.
And I was just thinking, man, there is absolutely no way the Sounders can pay these dudes even close to DP money. And somehow, I think Brian was very insistent on them getting paid fairly. He was kind of like the linchpin of them getting their max TAM deals, which I don't know how you're paying these guys 1.5, $1.6 million in MLS. Like maybe if there wasn't a salary cap, you could justify that, but with the resources being so limited and crucial, you cannot pay Jordan Morris and Christian Roldan 1.5, $1.6 million a year on a 3 or 4 year deal. I mean, that's going to kill your club. It's going to hamstring your team to where you can't add pieces in places you need to help in, and I think that it's going to have to be, in all honesty, it's going to have to be broken down completely and rebuilt up on it. Like that's what I think is going to have to happen. Like this club is going to have to fall. They're going to have to be broken, and they're just going to have to be rebuilt. And it's going to probably come in the form of an office change, a front office change, and a coaching change. It's going to have to be
Wow.
a
So you're
clean
saying
break.
both.
Yeah, I think
Wow.
it's got to be a clean break because Weibel's proven he can't carry the torch for Garth. He can't do it. He cannot be Garth, right? He's not even a poor man's Garth. Okay? He's not even a
He's
poor
a
man's Garth.
he's a down bad man's guard.
Yes, exactly. He's down bad. Exactly. And then Brian has proven that he's kind of mid without Garth. Like he's not very effective. He doesn't know how to scout or pick certain players, or he can't do it all. So Brian has proven he's good when he has a good roster, but he cannot do much outside of that. What about this plethora of injuries we've had? Ruidíaz, Morris, Paulo, Yeimar. Now Yeimar was obviously that was a knee injury, right? So like it was kind of like you can't really blame the injury staff for that. But all these other players that have been out for numerous matches, Stefan Frei, I looked at the starting lineup and I don't know if there was a single player on the team last year that played more than 30 games. Like the whole damn team was hurt. So like at a certain point, you're like, who is in charge? Like, who are we blaming for this? You can't, it's not two guys, it's the whole team is always getting hurt. So why aren't they making adjustments? Why aren't they asking these questions? Okay, if nobody can stay healthy, everybody's got glass bones. What can we do to fix this? What can we change to make sure that we're doing our part to keep these guys healthy? I don't even know if everybody's healthy if they can win. I mean, this is literally like the 2019-2020 Sounders team, except swap out Nico Lodeiro for Pedro de la Vega. I mean, that's literally what it is
And
essentially.
way older now. Yeah, it is.
Exactly, exactly. It's an older version of that with Pedro de la Vega in for Nico Lodeiro. So yeah, I think they're cooked, honestly, even when he does come back. They've got to add several pieces, man, or they're screwed.
If things keep persisting the way they are persisting, do you think Brian's gonna get sacked?
I mean, you would if it was a serious club, yes, he should and he would. If they're serious about winning and holding a high standard, he would be fired. I mean, like I said earlier,
Because I feel like no one's really talking about this at all, like,
oh,
about what, like,
he's not. He doesn't have a hot seat. He's on the cozy seat, man. Like, I mean, he might have 4 years. Who knows? I mean, is anyone even paying attention to like what's going on? I feel like this. And I was talking to a buddy about this, yesterday, which is crazy. But it's like, do you feel like the Sounders Timbers rivalry has kind of died a little
it
bit? Like,
has.
it feels
Yeah,
like it
I've
doesn't even
spoken
matter
about this.
anymore. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't even matter
Well,
anymore. It's
Brian
like
hasn't Brian hasn't won, against the Timbers at home since what was it, like, 20 I wanna say 17? He hasn't
that
even
sounds
beaten them
right.
since 2021, like,
Yeah, that sounds right. But it's like it doesn't even matter anyways. Like both teams are down bad right now, and like no one really cares. I mean, Timbers look up somewhat promising, but they were down bad for several years prior. It's like that rivalry, which was the biggest MLS at the time for several years, has
constantly both
died.
team was making conference finals, like, very ambitious. Yeah, I
Yeah,
see
from
what you mean.
2015 until 2021,
20? Yeah,
every team, those teams rotated between each other, which one played in the MLS Cup final
yeah.
between those, and that's completely, that's done now. But
A far cry from
yeah,
then.
exactly. Yeah, we need to get in the time machine to go back to those days. But yeah, it feels like it's just completely different. It's like they're a shell of themselves. I mean, they gotta. That's why I say that I don't think like anything with Brian that they add. Like if they add another piece, right? I think it would be a band-aid job. It's not going to be something that's going to be a long-term stable that's going to lead to long-term stable success. It would be something that's like lightning in a bottle. It's not going to be something that they can build that's going to be good for now. They're going to have to do a complete roster overhaul, break this thing down to build it back up. Morris, Rusnák, Ruidíaz, Stefan Frei, all of them have to go. They make way too much money from what they contribute. João Paulo has to go. Like they have, like Pedro de la Vega should be their
Focal
cornerstone
point.
piece,
Yeah.
and then they need to build around him.
I think you're right. I mean, I think that's valid points. I mean, be it Stefan Fry, be it's just like there's been so many opportunities you talked about earlier where there was offers on the table for certain players, be it Nouhou, be it Arreaga, be it Roldan, be it Morris, but instead, like the team decided to renew their deals and now they're stuck with them. And I just feel like this team, not only on the field but off the field, have lost their killer instinct of being. Because, like, think about it, Oba. Like, this is a great comparison I make. Back in 2015, Oba was the Sounders' best player, heads and toes. He was the best player. As soon as that big offer came from Shanghai Shenhua in China, when they were buying all these big players for big money, Garth didn't hesitate to be like, all right, bye, Oba. Like, see you later. We're cashing in on you. But like now we're just like, oh no, but like Nuhu's our cuddly teddy bear. Stephen Fry was like one of the goalkeeper of the year nominees. It's like, be smart on when it's time, the right to sell players, like when the time is right before it's. I hate referencing this 24/7. It's just like the Batman quote. Either you die hero, be it selling them when, yeah, they have a, like, yeah, they're doing well. And like, it kind of sucks that we're selling them, or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Cause we're seeing that with so many of our players. Like, I hate that Brian is, if things go so sour with Brian, he leaves on this type of note, be it sacked, be it him leaving, be it whatever. Like, that's the worst way. Like, you thought a great time for Brian to go was after winning CCL in 2022, and fans' perspective of him might be a lot more different, say, if he did that then versus now, or be it with Jordan Morris, or be it with Lodeiro, be it with Ruidíaz. Like, yes, these guys are all club legends, but it just sucks the way things have ended with these players because we've just kept persisting with them and not changing with the league. And yes, this recipe has worked before, but it's like you have to adapt. It's like adapt or die. And right now, you're just seeing the Sounders dying right now.
Yeah, exactly. Do you remember in 2015? Obviously, that was almost a decade ago, but the resources were even more scarce for MLS back then.
Yeah.
TAM had just been introduced that season. The Sounders, this was Siggy's first or last full season. They tried a Hail Mary and like committed to try to win.
Yeah.
They signed Nelson Valdez. They signed Roman
Ivan
Torres.
Shits.
Yes, Ivan Shits. Yeah, exactly. They were trying to make a deep run for
The
the cup
Hail
that year.
Mary was
Hail Mary.
such a good
E-
phrase. Yeah.
exactly. They try to help, like they were like aggressively trying to compete. And it's like, where the hell is that club at anymore? Where they were down, like they were kind of mediocre last year. Where the hell was this at last year? Why did
Yeah,
they try
during
to
the
add the
off
pieces?
season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Why? Where is that? Well, I mean, obviously that front office is in Atlanta now, but where is that ambition at? That drive to try to be the best club in MLS. It's like they're just so complacent with what they're like. Yeah, you know, we've won before, but hey, we'll just see what happens.
The fans will still keep coming back to the stadium. They'll still keep buying our
Yeah, hey,
jerseys, and
it's not 47,000, but hey, 30,000 is still top 5 in MLS. So hey, we're good with that. Hey, not
I
too
know,
bad.
and it's true, and I think it starts from top to bottom for me anyway. I think it starts from top to bottom, be it the club organization, the front office, from Craig to Bryant, and then it goes into the players. But it's like, if you're gonna not change the team, you don't wanna pump money into it. You don't wanna make any ingoing or outgoing transfers. You have a coach that will not give players who have been playing well, be it an Andrew Thomas, be it a Musovski, be it a Cody Baker, significant more minutes when they've been our better players this season, and keep persisting with the guys like Jordan. Or I know Raúl's the top goal scorer. I think he's been good, but he's not been that good. Morris has missed countless chances, countless chances. Be it whoever. I mean, those are just the names off the top of my head. It
Yeah.
just all trickles down. It's a whole ladder effect. And I think that's what's costing the Sounders. And in regards to like a short-term plan, like in regards to this summer, what if you were to name like a top priority for this team within a reasonable amount? What do you think that needs to be for this team? Be it right now, maybe rotating the squad, be it in the summer, what kind of players do they need to bring in and or sell? Where do you think the beginning of this solution starts?
If I'm the Sounders, like just say I've taken over the team, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm taking Weibel's job, which I think maybe I could do better than him, but I think we all think we could do better until we're in the actual seat, right?
Yes.
I'm buying Ruidíaz out. He's got half a season left on his contract
That's
at
gonna
that
be
point.
easy.
Buy
Yeah.
him out, and then I'm going and I'm swinging big for a top tier striker. Well, at least by MLS standards, a striker who has proven they can consistently score goals, and ideally someone who's not 28 or 29 or 30, maybe someone a little younger, so you can actually, if you're going to keep a team for 6 years together, they're not 35 at the end of it. They're still like late 20s or like 30 or
Like
31.
like a Cucho or a Yaku Makis, for example.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it kind of sad that the Columbus Crew are dropping 10 mil on a striker, and the Sounders literally it took them like 4 years to muster up the courage to spend any money, and it was and the you know what I'm saying, like are we that's where we're at now,
Yeah, I know, it's
that the
true.
Crew are outspending the Sounders now, like that is crazy.
It's like a parallel universe type of thing.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. And I would like to see like the Sounders kind of replicate what the Galaxy have done. Look what they've done recently. They've spent money on young players who have a lot to give. Joseph Paintsel from
Oh,
Gank.
from Gank, yeah.
He is doing wonderful. He's doing great in MLS. He's a game changer for them. Gabriel Peck from the Brazilian league. I think Sao
Just
Paulo was
yeah,
I think
just
was where he
scored
came from.
against us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Two dynamic wingers on each side who cost $10 million plus each. And look at how much we're talking about a Galaxy that hadn't done anything in a decade with a blip of Zlatan Ibrahimovic. But outside of that, they've done nothing in a decade. Now they look they look revitalized. They look like they
I
came
know
back from the dead.
it's like the roles have reversed with Seattle and LA. Like last year, Seattle was one of the top teams, LA were one of the down bad teams, and now things have reversed. And that's just like in like just that quickly, just
Yeah.
because of ambition and realizing what the problems are and attacking those issues.
Exactly. I mean, like I said, from an outside perspective, I try to keep up with every club as closely as I can. It's a little difficult the more teams we're adding. But I mean, is it a money issue? Like, is Seattle like cash poor right now?
I
I
don't
mean,
feel like they
yeah,
that's what we
that's like what's his name, the owner? Is it Adrian
yeah, Hanauer.
Hanauer? Yeah. Like I don't know what his net worth is, but he's as long as I've known him as an owner, he's always been pretty willing to spend. It's like I don't know what's changed lately, but like,
I mean, fans, as we said, there's fans consistently 20, 30,000 selling out in the top jersey sales. Sounders have sold plenty of players. Like, it's not like they haven't accumulated probably a good amount of money, be it in TAM and this, and you have other players you can cash in on, be it Xavier Arreaga, be it Nouhou, be it whoever. Of the many players you mentioned, you can still cash in on other players and accrue more money. It's not like money is not there to be made.
exactly, exactly. And you would like to see the Sounders either kind of like make a hybrid adjustment between LAFC and the Galaxy of what they're trying to like a roster construction. I mean, they got to use those U22s. They're so crucial. Look at the Galaxy. Like we said, they have two high-priced wingers right now. The guy in the middle uh, who is doing very well, and the benefactor of this great play is Joveljic. He's like second in the league in goals right now as a
He scores
U22
almost
signing.
every game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not because he's just all of a sudden good. It's because the service is provided for him. Like if they're not going to spend on a striker, get an equally good right side version of De La Vega. You can have two speed demons, like creative players on each flank who can
And
create chances for
instead of
everybody.
shoehorning it, don't get me wrong, I think Roldan is a great option to have on that right, wide spot, but, like, he's not an out and out not a modern day outside winger, like, he just isn't. Like,
No.
shoehorning him in is just not the solution anymore. He's a great guy to play anywhere in the field, but it's like
Yeah, he's not really good at any one position. He's just kinda like the guy you can, stopgap for you if you need
yes.
something, which is good to have, but you don't pay that guy
Yes.
$1.6 million,
Yeah.
Like, that guy is like a utility $400,000 player. So, they need something other than De La Vega. They need to try to I mean, they just need to do something. God, like, just do anything, you know?
It's
It's
like
like the
that
meme of the
meme.
stick. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
We're
Yeah,
about to say the same
exactly. Come
thing.
on, do
Yes, exactly.
something. So it's like, are you awake? Yeah, and Seattle used to be one thing I used to admire about Seattle was they were a very proactive team. They were setting the standard. They were doing things other teams weren't doing. Like I talked about in 2015 when they signed Valdez and Torres
Ivan
and
Shits.
yes, Ivanchits, yes, exactly. And then when they signed Dempsey, there hadn't been
That
a
was
team in
huge.
MLS that signed a guy for $10 million. Like that was crazy. Yeah, and now they're not even being reactive. They're just not doing anything. They're not doing anything. Like they're not doing a damn thing, and it's sad because we need Seattle to be good. One of the
'Cause
things that I've
next
taught.
next year's Club World Cup for them. They might be the only MLS representative in it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not looking good. It's not. It's definitely not looking good. The wheels fell off in the Miami game tonight. But that's the thing. It's like the problem with MLS, right? And I'm a fan of the league. Many people ask me, "Who's your team?" I don't have a team. I just support the league. I want it to be good. I want it to be relevant. I want it to be quality. How good would this league be if LAFC, the Galaxy, the Sounders, the Timbers, these were all teams that weren't rotating of which one is relevant. What if they were all relevant at the same time fighting for that spot? That's how you get a good league. Not having one come in and one come out of relevancy, every couple years. Like they need to be striving to be coming for each other and trying to be the best club they can be year in and year out, not take years off and just be complacent about what's going on. Now, do you think that the outcome of Schmetzer, like, or the leash he's been given, would it be any different if they had not won a CONCACAF Champions League?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So if they didn't win that and then they had that season, the same results, you think he would have been canned?
I think most definitely. I think so. I think there would have been no excuse at that point, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can. I understand the argument. Like, I understand it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's like if you do start talking about, yeah, Brian, you're not doing well. He's like, do you know who I am? I'm the first coach to win Champions League. Do you know who I am? Who else has done this? Where else are you going to find this at? And it's like, damn it, Brian, we have higher standards than that. We got to at least make the playoffs. It's like, I don't. I mean, that well is gonna dry out soon, and he's not gonna be able to
In my
cling on
opinion,
to that.
I think it should have dried out at the end of last year, but I mean, it should have ended last year. Like, I don't know. Again, but that goes back to our point with sitting on our laurels. Like, yes, we won CCL. Yes, we missed playoffs, but there was no change from then on. Like, that should have ended at the end of 2022. Yes, we could uh prancy around with the winning CCL being the first team to do that, but then like move on. Like, that's the end of it. No successful club in Europe, in South America, in MLS, if they win a big trophy, they just be like, we're good from there. Like, it's okay. Whatever happens now, I can die happy. Like, no, like, you got to build on that because now there's truly expectation because of the stuff I just mentioned. You're playing in the FIFA Club World Cup. You're going to be playing in the new expanded FIFA Club World Cup. Like, all the eyes are now on you. This is a huge opportunity. You don't want to spurn that opportunity.
Here's a question I have for you. Let's just say hypothetically, this thing doesn't get any better, right? And let's say
Okay.
that they do sack Brian Schmetzer in the next month or two. Who do you want them to hire as their next coach?
It really, really depends. And I appreciate you flipping the question on me. And I think this is the best way to end today's video, too, is I think I don't think it would happen, but someone I wouldn't mind because I think it's ambitious and I think it's up the team's alley, and I think he's someone that knows MLS well is like Jesse Marsh. But I know apparently he really wants a job in Italy. But dude, Jesse Marsh would be such a good like. Don't you feel like that's like kind of like the right type of appointment? I don't think it's a realistic type of appointment, but it's the right type. Like, he has experience in the league, he has experience in Europe. He's American. He understands the language. He understands how the league works. Like, that would be an ideal kind of appointment. A super stab in the dark. This is so crazy to say, and I don't know how you would like this, Will, but I wouldn't mind if Seattle brought in Carlos Queiroz, but that's like very heavily biased, and I know that's so out of left field, but I had to put in like one out of left field one. But I don't know. That one, that's the problem, is that's the big question, is if Seattle sack Brian, is there viable options? Yes, there is. It's just a matter of, can the club be smart enough to find the right guy? That's the thing, is there is options. It's just like that. I don't know. I haven't properly sat down and been like, okay, which coach would really fit the bill? In my opinion, I think Jesse Marsh would really fit the bill. Would Jesse want to come here? I don't think so, though. That's the problem.
I think that if the Sounders end up making a coaching change, Jesse Marsh would be a good hire because he knows the league. He's won in the
Yep.
league. He hasn't won a cup, but he's got success in the league, right? With teams that don't spend nearly as much as
Yeah.
what Seattle has shown they will spend or have spent
Have
in the
spent.
past. Exactly. But I think honestly, they need to go outside. They need to get a foreign coach. They need to get an international coach. I think they need to change this thing up because I just don't think the coaching pool is very good when it comes to MLS. I would probably go with someone like maybe see if you could lure Patrick Vieira, who had
Wow. Yeah,
who
he
had
has been here before.
yeah, who's
Yeah.
been here before, has shown interest in coming back, but there was a little bit of a dispute of how much power he could have with the team. Build a really good team with New York City FC, and I got another New York City FC coach, Ronnie Dyla, who
Oh
just got
my
fired
god.
with
Yeah.
I think it was
Standard Liège?
Center Liège, yes, exact,
Yeah.
or maybe it was a bigger club than that. I think that was his first club. I think he actually got another job. Was he at Bruges? I think he
I
was
don't
at
know, but
Bruges.
somewhere in Belgium. Yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think he got a promotion. I think he was at Bruges and they just recently fired him. But yeah, he was at Bruges. He was there for a full season. But he won MLS Cup with New York City FC and he beat your big rival. He beat the Timbers in the final, right?
yeah.
So, I mean, that's a guy who's won, but kind of has like that outside tactics and knowledge of the game. That's the kind of coach that I would want. I don't want a recycled MLS head or an assistant coach and take a chance. Like, I think Seattle, they fire Brian. First of all, there's going to be big shoes to fill, but they have to get a coach who has a proven track record and can do things differently so that this
Level
thing.
up.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, you don't want to stay the same. You want to get better.
I think that's the best way to end it. We'll let everyone that's watching definitely let this whole thing simmer for sure. But boys and girls, this is a long, long video. As I said in the beginning, in the intro, this is going to be more of like a podcast style type of video. If this is something you guys want to see more often on the channel, let me know in the comments down below. In regards to the plethora of things me and Will spoke about in today's video, let me know your guys' thoughts. You guys agree? Do you guys disagree? You guys have to let us know because we're obviously not perfect. We're not 100% right. It's just fans talking about the league, and especially getting an outsider's perspective, like Will's, definitely helps versus just having a Sounders fan like myself biased talking about it. So I hope that was something you guys wanted to see and hear on the channel. But nonetheless, boys and girls, more videos coming on the channel, a couple of really big ones coming up. But boys and girls, I hope you'll have a lovely day.